what was really at stake here is huge.
Out on the water on a Tuesday afternoon, Hazen Shopbell seems relieved.
It's a big win.
Late in 2021, a judge dismissed 5 felonies against both Shopbell and his business partner. The hugs you see here, reaction to the judge saying the case was never the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife to investigate or the state's to prosecute.
I believe jurisdiction is not within the confines of this court.
But back at the docks, the damage is done. Hazen's business died shortly after WDFW turned up the heat on him. You see, Hazen grew up on these waters, hearing his grandparents complain about dock prices for a day's catch.
I was probably 3, 4 years old, and that's kind of where, it started the fire in me.
That's why he started Puget Sound Seafood Distributors. The goal? Buy fish from tribal fishermen, corner the market, and make his fellow fishermen a better payday. Now, the business took off, causing non-tribal fish buyers to complain. Before long, they'd drawn the attention of WDFW. In case notes, a detective would write that Shopbell's company was trying to monopolize the Tulalip crab industry. She questioned whether it was, quote, reverse racism, whether the success was too good to be true.
This is an investigation that started with overt racial bias, the belief being that it was reverse racism for treaty fishermen to sell to treaty fish buyers their Dungeness crab. We then saw a reckless investigation carried out through 30 search warrants that were obtained from courts up and down the Puget Sound.
At its core, this case was about whether the company had illegally trafficked shellfish. Basically, whether they bought clams that were illegally harvested.
Yeah, you're going to be arrested.
But Shopbell's lawyer, Gabe Galanda, tells me things escalated when the AG's office got involved. Redacted emails appear to show members of the AG's office guiding the prosecution. And there's been questions about whether the charges themselves were shopped. Documents show cases were floated in Pierce, King, Snohomish, Kitsap, and eventually Skagit, where this latest ruling came in. A judge called all of it troublesome.
This is a 50-year fight. The fish wars have never stopped. There are still people within the State Department of Fish and Wildlife and within the Attorney General's office who have fought the fish wars for decades, for careers. What was at risk is Tulalip existence as we know it. These are fishing peoples. And this way of life was under duress and attack by the state of Washington, as it has been for a century and a half.
The case is over, and Hazen is a free man, but this is bigger than one fisherman. Had he lost in court, he believes a court precedent would have been made, that state enforcement of fishing laws would have been opened up on tribal lands, undoing the very rights fought for during the fish wars.
For me, it's like knowing that my children's rights are protected one more day. And it feels a lot better that my tribe is protected.
Now the affiliated tribes of Northwest Indians are calling on an investigation of the entire situation. They want to know whether policy or laws were broken by the AG's office or WDFW. They want details on how much the 5+ year investigation cost taxpayers. And they're calling on a moratorium of impounding tribal members' boats, a practice that essentially takes away tribal members' ability to make a living. As for WDFW, they've long told me they simply followed leads and investigated. Their law enforcement chief issued a statement saying they, quote, take the protection of natural resources seriously, adding, our job requires us to investigate and document apparent violations of law and submit them to prosecutors in the courts. This does not mean that every charge and every case that gets referred leads to a successful prosecution, end quote. The governor's office isn't talking about the case, and the AG's office says their only involvement was as DFW's legal counsel, telling me, quote, in our capacity as legal counsel, our attorneys often work with county prosecutors who are prosecuting or evaluating cases that the Department of Fish and Wildlife investigated. But out in Indian country, there's concern over whether all this will happen again.
Many times I sat in court and I thought about this place, and I could have given at any moment, and the state always offered me deals of no jail time, or we could have had relief. But at the same time, I think about what was at stake was our sovereignty, and so that's something that I would never sell.